Understanding communication screen lines and high adaptation surface is start to recognize who you are in interactions. Set up a very powerful line calculation to its settings to your system. Now it's all levels and how you communicate to your alpha, delta, and your thetas. We've been through that track calculation setting. But you have to understand how to identify yourself now through your set lines of grounds, powers, and the atmospheres. Now that's a three-track revision. But see, the three-track revision is the 4/3. That's the indicating line interference of the seven bodies of water that's new tracked to a set location of the cerebral. The cortex of its design lines has to recognize the high calculation and settings of zeros and ones and zero point 0.1. If it understands its provisions, then you understand more lines of calculations. So get into your imagination screen to all calculations. Every atom lines, every particle stream interference, in-track locations, everything inside location is itself engine that propels its system to its calculations. So the actual atoms itself is coming into merge. It's merging into the earth line, which is connected to your water and your airs and your fires. Vector calculation lines, getting imagination screen interference, electrical high infusion, high position of trial calculation of its program. Think of yourself as a circuitry box. Inset lines of trial calculated line system come into the holographic string of directions. Now, in that set code, really high interference and trial position to its operation setting, you come into the brown wire, you come into the blue wire, you come into the black wire, and you come into set locations, all settings, and I have this location to its orange. You tweak those wires and set location line centers, set the cold lines to high position location into high fusion and cold infusion. Puts altitude lines in H2O, track location of water lines, sequence lines of plasma, generate the screen lines, high adaptation system, put energy line wash, track to its correlate high in position 4/3/7 line condition over pi. Track these calculated lines, take out a 12 line center interference, 1x line orientation, one track line connection high system, puts 24 cycles interactions. Position lines of high center interference puts all levels of allocate line switching. Now that line interference puts everybody in the cerebral cortex lines. March 1st and track calculation high position to its application setting high calculations put in everybody in the image. And so, okay, so teams will be in line settings out of images and into our group. The track to its communication line is the particle line setting. Now, if you understand the particle accelerators and how it works in interactions, you understand the provisions, how it sets lines of communication. Traction to all calculation modification lines. You really understand how to get in your surrenders now, guys. Really get into that modification screen lines, adaptation certification system. All thoughts are going to be all levels and prevail. Track location lines of belief, taking all that track lines, high center interference, how you reiterate your alphabetical line screens and high centrification to its adaptation system, and how you see things through provisions. Like in calculation modification, you come into the meeting. Okay, you know exactly what it means to its pi, position of its percentage, and that's why you guys are off calculations, because you put yourself in dormants in calculation of replicas. The replicate location system will stay dormant until you understand what it becomes. Actually, it's meaningless. And then you understand what the meaningless equals lines of truth, which comes into what you see, location, setting, then travel. That puts all levels of calculation line interference. Then you start to recognize what it is. In position locations, it's how you see yourself and what it means to you interactions, right? So meaningless becomes its meaning. So when it comes its meaning, then you understand it doesn't exist. Unless you want it to exist. That's on you. That's dependence on your application you're sending through travel. All right, so we go through box screens and high calculation lines box frames, direct lines position panels, indirect high interference of 45 line setting, track calculation high interference of time setting, track location of point line tracks, direct lines position location setting, and center line rotation surface, and reline calculation setting into a particle accelerator track location. Direction lines modification line screens, high center interference, and center position to its calculations. Direct calculation line screens, all line rotation surface. Re-angle points, line settings, and height travels. Direct communication settings and travel calculations. Point line divisions. Now we open line centers. Let's go into sequence line communications. So if it's off track location, this is what happens. Off calculation line settings, right? Retrack division as center lines. Open those signal line communication to its atom line. Center high calculation line centers of 4-point tracks at 3 set locations. Direct communication lines at screens. Modification screen lines, high setting. Modulation screens, high lines of high center interference, portal communications, 12 line signatures, and line calculation to travel. Okay. Now, direct lines of calculation line interference. The observers lines, acceleration line screens, high center interference, position programs, teams constant allocation of time sequence, particle line, cell generator, line rotation, centers of track calculation, point lines of tracks, point lines of divisions, and point line set lines and high center interference into modular location setting and travel calculation of the point center. Direct modification of screen lines and high adaptation. Point line divisions and center. Okay, see the energetic dome line rotation centers of travel. Particle streamlines and high calculation stream interference and particle accelerators and streamline position locations, how you go through parallels, paradigms, polar shift, and it's all calculated through its paradox. Position of travels, point lines of tracks, point lines of high center interference, going position lines of 3-track line conditions in position locations into 3-track line conditions into setting the travel. Direct modification line centers is center calculation line system. All travel position line calculation setting to its operating location center of point lines of high calculation. Point line settings, high travel calculation, high position locations, and all line centers of face recognition. See the eye lines, high position travel lines, looking down and shift line communications, face recognition. Okay, see the face? See the face come in? See? All dimensional screens, dimensional lines, high center interference to travel calculation, point lines, looking down in this set line conditions. Know exactly where it's going through its particle stream line calculation, particle accelerator. Direct lines of panels, positions of track lines, high center interference, operations, circle location, setting to travel calculation, high settings. Interest however come to 12. Times lines to high interference, equal line types of location, X line, in line condition line center, E line position location, X lines of 1, and track locations. Now, directing calculation of 1 line centers in position of portals. Direct calculation of program location, setting to track calculation of position of its operation. Direct calculation of 12 lines, 1 signature line streams, 2 line tracks, 1 line provision line settings, cards and signals. Sets lines of correlations and atoms, and 2 track line set location of 4-track line conditions of time steps. Time measure line conditions of theta, communication line centers, and omega, and communication of setting. Travel position travels, rotates the certification setting, and travel communication programs. Directing modification screen lines and high adaptation line settings in position road graph screens to direct signals. Positions of programs, you know exactly how to go through a particle line screen and direct signal location modification line settings. Opens all signal lines and high center interference and sigma and set position travels. Look at that. Traveled so fast it disappeared in travel calculation line system and travel calculations. Point line divisions, point lines of tracks, point line division. Okay. So getting that correlation settings, the particle accelerator sets lines of high center interference. Sets line provision line cycles. Let's say you got 5-point tracks and 3 lines of mapping sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Triangulate high interference of 3 set location line settings and location of 6 and set location anomaly. Direct calculation lines and point lines of tracks. Direct locations into H line center and track locations. Fibonacci line screens. Directing lines panels. Modification line center high position of its operation. Point lines of 1, point lines of 0, point lines of 2, point lines cross lines of 6, 6 lines of 7, 6 lines of 8, 8 lines of 9, 9 position of 10, and line set of 11 and 12 applications, 24 cycles high calculation as program direct signal. All setting position travel, direct lines of high position as path, and center communication setting, and protocol location system, and travel calculation line settings of a solar track line conditions of its operation system to its dimensional line calculation setting to its delta heading. See? D-line setting. Position line centers and solar sail and the opposite direct signals. Clocking line centers in position locations and all travel calculation line centers. Setting calculation lines of Earth, sensification of space, and 2 line divisions and tractions. Done my equation. All right. Point lines of track. Understanding travels in all settings is where you understand how to see yourself in all calculations. Now, once you get in provision line cycles, it's very powerful because the calculation of your holographic line string sets position lines of your atoms. Atoms comes in calculation of 1 line center, travels in position of 2-point locations, right? In line connection molecule design, and 3 line connections in programs. Center position lines indicate high position of 3 line stops, 4 line divisions into center calculation line centers of pi and traction. Directing lines, modification lines, high center interference, pi direct line connection, high center interference, position locations in 1 indicates 1, 1, 1, or line center location of set lines, high interference box. Triangulation resets lines, Fibonacci line swirl, direct line calculation setting 3 wires. Direct calculation line here, high position locations of 4 generation, 3 set location of 7. 7 platitudes line, screen high interference, subposition location line centers of 5, 12 line signals, high calculation setting. So it comes in the line communication of 3 equals lines of 24, 24 equals lines of 3 and track line connections, 3 line provisions, north, south, and east, and diamond core, and line calculation setting and program location to a system. track calculation with the modification line screen high positions operation. That's my equation. Get in that line centers is ready to send how to really get in that connection of travel. How it outlines its signals and outlines its equation line centers and travel communications, outlines its position. It's set calculations, right? Outlines its position, right? Point lines of track, point lines of divisions, and point lines of circle, triangulation, reset position programs. Okay, so once you get the earth line that connects to the air and the waters and the fires, the track location of 3 wires, 1, 2, 3, sets lines of 4, track location of 1 line provision, right? 1 line settings, equals lines, calculation line centers is 0, 1, sets specification of 0, 1. 1 line 0, and position of 0 equals lines of 1 in track locations, right? So that's 3 in provision, 2 in over pi. So 4 indicates lines of 3, 3 indicates lines of high center interference of 3, 3 indicates lines equals lines of high calculations of 2, equals lines of 5, 5 lines of 7 lines of 2, 2 over lines of triangulation, position of box, triangulation position programs, start calculation high dislocations, over vector over cross signals, high position is pi. Fourth line high calculation of 4 lines of 3, 7 in provision line settings and travel calculations. Part accelerators and line change, direct lines modifications, screen lines, high adaptations, and surface and applications. Direct lines modification line center high calculation. Computer operates line screens, high center interference, crossing line symbols, and track line conditions. All levels of modification lines, screen lines, and high adaptation, surface, and track location. Modification lines of 0, sets lines of 1. Remember the on switch and the out switch? Okay, so let's just say we have a singularity box line, sets lines of 0. It's already in 0 because lines. You turn on the switch, it's 1. Turn off the switch, it's 2. Turn off the switch, it's 3. Turn off the switch, it's 4. Back to 0 line conditions of 1. Equals lines are 0 and point line 1 in set location of travel. Now, directing lines of communication system is understanding the data ports. Data streams allocate line centers, high interference, highway communication stream lines, high capacity specification system. That's line 12 lines, center IDE, high interference, position of 4. 4 equals lines of 3, sets location of 3, sets location of 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, and 3 set locations. So modification lines of 3, sets calculations of 3, and modifications of 3. Bracket communication lines equals lines of 0, 1, equals lines of 0.1, and attractions. Computes line interference of image. Set of communication lines of phenomenon, sets location of image to its algorithm and set locations. Got my equation. Very complicated stuff, guys, to application line screens. All right. Yeah, direct line, sequence, and position of the line centers and high adaptation, system location, its calculations, modification, screen, interference, location of point lines of center. See, point lines of center. Right. So you're looking at this, but what it actually is this interactions. Okay. So this is actually this up close, right? Modulation lines is 0. Sets lines 0 and 0 in position of 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1. Sets lines 0, 0, 0, 2 in set locations. Sending track calculator. See how it's changing direction? See? It's moving, right? Center track lines, so high center, high interference position of programs. All through signature light screens. See? In specifications, adaptation, surface. See? It's all communicating, right? Because I'm scanning line set location up close, line screen location setting. Box lines, 45-degree angle, line condition, graph calculation, dream interference, holograph line, position location of travels. Okay, setting position locations, directing lines of signals. Sets communication line interference in position of its program and set location. Okay. Graphical screens, adaptation lines, images, lines, screen height, position location of its program. Phenomenon change equals lines of calculation of lines of 0, 1 equals lines of calculation of 0.1 attractions. Right, that's set lines calculation of species and its calculation line centers into team. Okay. Set of communication line centers is programs. Direct calculation lines is 0, sets lines of communication of 1, sets adaptation line screen high interference of 0.1 attractions. Point lines of graphs equals line calculation line interference. 0 calculation lines of 3 track line conditions. Remember, you have to have 4. Equals lines of communication of 4 line tracks. Remember, the 4 line connection has to go forward. Sets lines equals lines of 3, 7 in provision of cycles and adaptations. Right? So you're always finding a way is never have a surface line screen, not interlocation of part accelerator, The correlation setting to your dimension line screen's high center position of its application setting, your wires have to come into hot and cold infusion. Coming in line center lines of H2O interactions, right? Direct lines equals lines of plasma. Plasma change sets lines of clock line, change line, rotation surface, and a point lines of track and a 4-line measure and dynamic core line calculation setting to its program. Calculates line interference is 0 calculation of point line settings and add line rotation surface and track location to its measure. That sets lines calculation line centers and 12 line rotators and routers and run rotation settings calculation to its program and line setting and high travel and high rotation surface and track location. Directing position location settings. Okay. Center communication lines is where we're coming to the routers. Now you guys know the router phones, right? Routers, routers, point lines of track. You put your finger in there, you dial in settings. 3 tracks, lines of 1, 2, 3, adds 4 lines of signals, all right? Sets 6 lines setting, 7 lines of 8, 8 lines of 9, sets lines of 10, 10 equals lines of 11, 11 equals location of 12, 12 equals lines of 12, sets location of 12, 12, 24, sets lines of high center interference, 24 comes into line center locations into all the levels of 34. 34 communication line setting equals lines of high center interference in track location line system. Puts position line centers, okay? So setting calculation of 12 lines of space, 12 lines of time, and 12 lines of center and existence in that location line system. 34 line settings, add line conditions, all levels, high center interference into 10, sets position location number 2, sets travel calculation line centers, sets position locations in set location of operation setting. Triangulation resets and programs 9 over lines of pi, calculate the lines over 8, over 7 indicates line screens, high center adaptation surface, and retriangulation point line centers and water containment line stream interference into flux capacitive change line calculation setting, opposite line rotation surface, triangulation reset position programs and line calculation system, and dome centers and track line conditions, and online center high position of its operation set locations of phase direction and time sequence, and all levels of panels in correlation. Done by equation. Okay. Track provisions, setting lines of high center interference, your mechanism high position of programs. Your allocate line centers and unification line screens, sets position location and setting. Now this is often very high calculation. Let's go 17 line screens. Set equal lines at high calculation, high interference into 2-point tracks. Setting lines of high center interference in seconds, minutes, and 2 hours in track locations. Seconds, minutes, and hours, right? Seconds, lines of 1, and position the lines in minutes. Track locations to the 2 hours centers and travels. 2-point lines of track. Add the line centers of 3, sets line communication triangulation. Point lines at equal line calculation setting, the 3 track line condition settings, and all line center interference into your position locations, all levels, your grounds, your position, your powers, and your atmospheres. So powers in calculation setting travels, the atmosphere line screen high interference, center position location yin and yang, process lines of 6, location of 9, and set location. Travel calculation line of point lines of setting high interference is seconds, minutes, and hours in track location system is how you come into sequence location setting. Spacing lines high interference location of 0, 1, sets lines of high center 50,000 line screens. Okay, split the anomalies Gaussian of 3 equals lines high interference. Now the 3 track provision line center location has to have 1, 2, 3, 4 box locations of centers of travel. Point lines of center interference, fluctuation line screen, high position protocols, direct calculation lines of structure of design and position of its compute system, travel calculations. Point lines of division, line setting, high calculations programs, line center interference, and position location of its after projections into earth line calculation stream. Direct line position location to its setting and all line surface and all track location system and allocate time switching to high setting. All right, so in modification lines of platforms, the 3 track lines of high center interference provision the cycles into the cerebral cortex lines design. Metric meters, scales, lines, calculation line interference, setting line position of barometer line settings high interference into your astral projections and calculation line streams and film strips of the design line connection system into your line calculation setting and travel. Okay, done by equation. I know it's complicated, right? Very complicated stuff. All right, so formula equations lines is going to get a lot more harder now because you're going to higher lines of space. Modulation lines of thoughts, no more thinking in channel. Let me say that again. No more thinking in channel of operation streams. The application holographic line settings Each line connection to your atom is coming back into its consciousness, merging into set location line screens. So you got a atom line rotation, 2 track line side inference, you got a proton line division location of all lines, equals lines calculation electron, calculation line interference into a molecule design line, sets line side calculation line, and 3 track line connections, molecule design line interference, and position of travel. Direct calculation line triangulation resets, sets lines communication, sets line communication into box line center. They communication lines of travels, 3 indicate lines of location sitting. Position locations in the theta, the line of center line into 2 energy line wires, high position of 3, and position of 4 track line connections. Point line centers, this is where it comes in hot and cold infusion, and box centers and travel calculation line point centers in 5 position of travel. Correcting lines and modifications to screen lines. Center line centers, triangulation to reset, position of programs into line calculation setting. Now that's where the Merkabah gets all calculated modified and higher levels of channel line settings to its location. Directing modification line screens. Okay, higher levels of high interference, taking out of thoughts and image in position of course. Directing lines of 3 provision cycles in high calculation setting in position of its program and its application. Okay, done. Okay. All 3 travel calculations, guys. Right. Okay, directing modifier line screens into constants calculation stream interference power accelerators. Directing lines of panels, energetic graph calculation lines of 3, position location 1, 2, 3, line calculations of 4 tracks. Set lines of 0, sets lines 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Sets lines of 1, 1, 1, 3 lines of calculation of 2, 2, 2, sets location of 3, 3, 3, and bottom location center of travel. That's how it's set up. Point lines of high center interference, high calculation 1, 2, and 3 line provision. Crossing line signals, skyline, sky grid, sky position of panels. Set lines across line east and west and traction. Calculation lines, wind cycles, and high travel calculation of all levels of parameters and parameters. That calculation line interference, energetic dome screens is application of its operation, done by equation. Okay, see how that works? All through interpretation screens. Direct modification lines, 2, 0 lines of 3, 4, sets leading location of 1, 2, 3, sets lines of 4, provision lines equals lines of 3, sets 7 and indicate high centers of travel. See modulation screen line, chemistry high center location, XT1000 center location in UFO. Modification screens, directing lines of 0, and center communication setting in its program is application. Done by equation. All right. Center calculation string is understanding how to use the on switch line screen settings so you're coming to line screen interference. On switch sets location singularity box line, use calculation of triangulation line position of the program. Position line calculation line centers in 1 atom, 0 line calculations in triangulation at 3 sets, sets location of 4, 0, 0.3, 0.4. Now the team is going to inline send its heights to the travel lines. Point lines a track of 0 into 1, 2, 3 files of communication. So indicate inline interference has an equaline screen. Now that replication settings to your point lines of track puts position of center lines in your application, your Merkabah design. Modification system and triangulation reset position of programs. In position of box, triangulation, or in position line calculation, triangulation, or box and set locations. So calculation of male, set location of female, set location of female, set location of the male, equaline centers and height travel communication of point centers. Direct lines and calculation of your flywheel, set location line system of flywheel and set locations. Setting calculation line centers of female, position of male into its Merkabah its design. Calculation of male and box location, triangulation line connections Merkabah and set location of design. Coming together line centers. 2 atom line centers in the center communication setting. One going this way is set location of travel. The other atom line connection system is going this way in travel calculation. The point lines of tracks and settings, high low of arrows, and its indication system and travel calculation of point centers. Putting position line comes together in center communication line system and all line centers of face recognition. Okay, very powerful applications. So we come into Y line setting. See the Y there? There's a Y line setting. Show the Y line communications, direct signals, direct line position, operation location setting, how to calculate its position of its provocation setting, separating its position of particle line screen. Okay. So now we take the Y line center, which is U equals lines of H equals lines of calculation of flux capacitor, so that's position of travels. Calculation line centers X, Y, Z, XX, and XY equals lines calculation of 0, 1, set location line, set location of 0, 1, equal lines calculation line inference, and set locations of X, Y, and Z equals lines calculation of 0.1, and traction and set locations. Modulation screen is understand the computed screen interference. Setting position to its program and line calculation setting have to use the X, Y, Z, and XX positions, or X, Y, Z into XY position. Okay, male positions of two X's, XY's location is female. Okay, reading signals in position of travel and set location is set location. Okay. Now we have to understand how to modify that in screen lines, adaptation, location, because holographic settings is coming into modulation screen lines, adaptation, force direction, time sequence. Platitude screens is a plasma generation screen lines and split anomaly. Okay, sets location to its location grid and set location. Travel point line centers into the opposite directed signals. Okay, point lines of track, setting lines of triangulation and position location triangulation line centers and position of its operation. Direct calculation lines of 0 sets locations into your axis projections. Set lines of film strips of its designs of 3 triangles and 3 set locations. Now, getting the elixirs into line settings into cosmic flame, cosmic fire, serpent flame, serpent fire comes into triangulation, reset, position of programs, and line set location, laser grids, line set location, sky grid, sky modification, screen lines, high adaptation, surface, triangulation, position of point line centers, point line center, point line center, point line center, 3-track line provision, triangulation, reset, position of programs, set lines of calculation, setting, and travel. Point line center, high interference, sets lines 1, 2, 3, and 4 set locations. 4 lines of 3 sets lines communication setting and high charge and direct signal into a surge. Defaults channels and travel in line rotation, surface, and triangulation. Okay, in position centers, and its operation surface and track location. Okay, so box centers. Now the 4 provision line cycles to your particle accelerators is now in division. High calculation modification screen lines sets lines of 13 equals lines of 14. 14 line center interference. Is that a coincidence, 13 to 14? No. There's a reason why that comes in line sentence. That's 4 lines of 3 equals lines calculation of 7 in provision. 7 equals lines of high interference of energy. Energy lines high calculation to its mind. Mind track lines energy equals lines calculations to its memory. Sets lines equal line high interference locations to all levels into mic calculation line center location to its metric, calculation line interference to its scale, calculation line position of its balance, calculation line center interference into compasses location of CPU, and traffic calculation of point lines and point lines of track and high center interference and position location of its operation. Okay, done my equation. Nothing's coincidence when it's all on the board. Position of programs is all line centers. You really understand how to use your communicate screen lines into your computer frame. Direct lines modification screen, high center interference, and position of its program. Set lines calculation lines, settings high position of its operation. Sets lines of 13 equals lines of 14. See, that's how it works. Sets calculation high position program line center interference and track locations. Now direct line calculation line centers 1 over here. Sets lines of 3 over here. Sets lines equal like high position of center line calculation settings, 4 line settings. Travel calculation line centers. So it's 4 lines of 3 and 3 lines of 1 and travel calculation of point centers. So that puts position line center and high position locations back into 4 equals lines of 3 into 7 calculation of point centers. So getting line calculations again comes in line settings. So 13 equals lines of 2. Okay, 2 line tracks, 1 X lines, a high center line position of T line center high interference equals lines of 15 and track locations. Measuring countability, line centers of 0 lines. Keyboard line, keyboard phrase line centers of 1, 2, 3, 4 track locations. Provision line cycles come to escape. Go SC, line centers of C line center high interference. E lines is center line. C allocates position time sequence, back forces triangulation, and systematic line changes line calculation of bracket, center line interference, in position of 4 track lines, and center line calculation equals lines of 3 and track location. Provision lines of high calculation to its position programs and set location lines of 0s and 1s of travel. Point lines of setting. Okay. Now, directing lines of communication is really understanding how to use a computer mainframe line centers and how it sets lines of 0 calculation to point lines of 1, equals lines of 1, sets lines of high calculation of 2, sets lines of calculation of 3, sets line calculation of 4, sets line calculations of 5, circulations sigma, high calculation line zeta, zeta, gamma line, radiation line interference, alpha, mega, all organic type theta, positional key of delta, inline interference, delta communications of theta, sets tribal calculation lines of 5, 5 lines of 3, 5 lines of 2, tribal lines of 7, and tribal communication programs. Direct calculation modification line screens, high center interference positions, provocation setting position case calculation. Point line division, guys, is really understand how to use the 15 line screen. How do we go from 13 to 15 in a 4-track line condition? 15 equals lines of 4. Sets the calculation line center, add 1 line center, 15 equals 14, 14 over 4. See how it goes up and it goes down? That's how a computer has its memory. And now it's back up to 15.4, right? All through communication by voice line grid. So I'm in control. I'm in control of my numbers, letters, shapes, and symbols through its traffic, of its flowing, of its direct signals, how a computer comes into its memory, a set location of 0s and 1s, and track locations. Okay, all through indications of your anomalies, right? So you have your transistors and sending the calculation lines there. Let's say you get a flat 2 line interference, communication line, screen interference, of point lines of track location, transistors, substitution point centers, high center interference, split the anomalies, track calculation line, center location, atoms, molecules, design line interference, specific track calculation point centers of tracks. Okay, now, sending calculation line interference, 15 deviates line screen, puts position of 13. 13 equals lines of high calculation of 14, right? So that's 13 measure over lines equals lines of 4 equals lines of 3 equals lines of 7 equals lines over pi. And track calculation trifecta line screens sets position of 13, line centers of 12 equals lines of 4 and track location. So I'm constituting its setting and through its travel and how it's going through its seconds, minutes, and hours, not its hours, minutes, and seconds. The traffic calculation line stream interference goes from 12 to 13 to 14 to 15, and 15, 14, 13, 12, etc. So mechanism high force is understanding the transistors of its resistors. Translate up, resist down. Okay, so you understand line sentence, how it comes into positive or negative, positive charge, or surge communication of defaults. Traffic calculation of the point center, so its point line center, high position of its calculations. If you're using a 12 line provision, each line's calculation of 4, each calculation lines, you're working with 0, 1. Sets lines high center interference. 0 comes to the center, sets location of 1, sets line connections of 2, sets lines calculation of 3 to 4 track location. That's equal lines high interference. That's 2 singularities box location setting to 1 position of 1 pattern. Equals calculation line interference into position of 4 patterns and set location of 6, set lines of 7, and set location of travel. Very complicated stuff. Okay, that's how a computer does its reading through 0s and 1s in its memory. Okay, how it goes up and down, and now it's back to line centers, 12 line signature line. So that means the light switch went on again. So that means it's 13 equals lines of 4. Okay, went from 12 to 13, right? Oh, 13 line communication. Now it's at 14 equals lines of 4. See how it goes 14 and 4, right? So keeping track of that is keeping track of the volume. Is keeping track of the viewers that come on and go off. So when you go on, light switch goes on. When you go off, light switch goes off. So every time the computer memory changes the line set, you're changing the 0s and 1s and how you calculate the line system. Now, staying in that line calculation setting of your behavioral location system, you get into higher levels of frequencies. Now line centers, line interference is 14, comes into 15 equals lines of 4. Back in traction. See how it goes up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. So what it's doing, through scaling lines and high center interference into position location of settings to its dimensional scale and traction. Okay, that's what it's doing. Now it's going back to 14. So transistor up, resistor down. Okay, you have to understand the binaries, how it capacities its volume, how it sets lines of vast into all calculation of your settings. Okay, vast, volume, velocity. Equal set lines high interference, singularity 1 box, singularity 2 box, which is position locations, which is 4 patterns and set locations. 4 indicating lines 0, 0, 0, sets location of 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, 4 zeros line centers. That's 4 indicating line screens, right? And then we got 0, 1, and we got high position at all levels of 0 and 3, right? So it's all about understanding to create a pattern. And when it creates a pattern, it creates a velocity. And when it creates a velocity, it creates a mass, it creates its volume. So it really understands position. Once you create the pattern, you create the graph and set location of travel settings. Hooah, right? Now, once you create the graph, it comes in geometric line screen, high interference, a graphical screen. Directing calculation, modification, how you come in calculation line centers. Now we're at 16 equals lines of 4. You see how it goes from 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 16, 15, 14, 12? You see how that works now, how it travels on its own set locations? And it's indicating on its time sequence in seconds, minutes, and hours, and it's going through 38, 39, 40, how it's in chronological order. So in that provision line cycles, if you understand how to use the indicate line interference, singularity lines, and compute sys lines, and position of 4 patterns, communication line centers, or calculation line, triangulation lines at high center interference of 3 set location of patterns, and set location line centers, or position location of 2 track locations of patterns, plus position of singularities and set location, equal line communication of program line center, high interference of 0 equals lines of 1 turns on light bulb communication setting, track calculation of the point center. Okay, very complicated stuff. Now, it's from 16 added in one equation. Now it's at 17 equals lines of 4. See? So it's showing you exactly how a computer turns on and turns off its switch through its transistors, of its resistors, of its binary. Understanding that through capacitors and understand the volume of its capacity that it holds. So very complicated stuff. So it knows exactly what it's going to do next through seconds, minutes, and hours. So when you're speaking, your computer is also speaking, but it only speaks through zeros and ones and patterns. It's creating a pattern that's creating a graph. And once it creates a graph, what does it create to its setting? A Schumann resonance. Now, when it creates a Schumann resonance, it creates its all calculation to its power. That's the solar generation screen lines and high center interference. And then it creates its atmospheres, a set design that puts position of its program into your center communication setting. That puts in higher levels of H2O and track lines in your water and position equal lines of plasma and generation screen lines, high center interference, how to use the earth perceptions, how to use the air, the water, and its fire, and proceeding line calculation setting to your seasons and set location of summer, spring, winter, and fall. And now we're downshifting cross lines and transistors of 16_over 4. So it's the position line centers high calculation line system. But the travel calculation line center is 37. Track location line center equals line high position of 47 in track locations. So it's always going to be in chronological order because it knows what it's doing through its voicing line grid that's created its line setting location of space anomalies to track line conditions, changing everything in a formation, creating its image, okay, through zeros and ones and traction. And that's what it is. Once you get in a photo off screen, then you understand what your actual image is. It's nothing but created through line calculation, line settings of zeros and ones and track locations. Your phone, anything to photo op, anything through JPEG, anything calculation, line stream interference is position of probe location setting of zeros and ones and traction. And all set locations. Now we're back at line settings at 15. You jump line scar into 16. Sets calculation line interference and set line center high positions program equals lines of 4 in track location. Right? So keep a track of everything that you do through your seconds, minutes, and hours. Okay, space line has to get out of the correlations of 12, equals lines of 24, and track lines of space and position of time in set location line setting. Sets position of 34, line calculation lines of 10 equals lines of 2. That's 36 provision lines of fields and set location lines of the earth, the airs, the waters, and the fires. That's going to merge line centers to your particle accelerators in an add line rotation centers and track location system and setting calculation lines and all line rotation surface in its conscious stream location to its setting of its image. Okay, very powerful. Now we're at 17. See, I already know what it's going to do. I know it's going to go to 17. I know it's going to go to 18. I know it's going to go to 19. I know it's going to go to 20. Because I have complete control of what I'm doing through my navigation, right? 18 to 17, right? That's how a computer communicates with you through frequency, okay? Through its mainframe. Try to understand how it all comes together through an image line, set lines of high interference, and travel calculation of point line centers of travel calculation with point system, all through recognition. Okay. So now it's at 18. Now it's at 17. See, you come in, you go out. You come in, you go out. So every time you go in, it switches, right? The transistors, the resistors, the binaries, the capacities, the capacitors, they switch back and forth, back. Now we're at 5, right? So all Japanese line screens was all position location of 16 equals lines of 4, but now it's 17 equals lines of 5. What is 5? Balance. Balance of all calculation lines and navigation, right? Anything above 5, the chakra system is above the system. Now we're at 16 equals 5, right? So we got a 40 track lines in position of 40. Setting lines at high center interference, taking line position location and program location in seconds, minutes, and hours, and triangulation. Really understand how to use the platforms and all communication in your settings, how to use your data streams, how to use your allocated line switches. Now it's at 17, right? Equals 5. Now it's 18 equals 5, right? So we all understand how this works in line settings, okay? To really recognize these things in the future already. Now it's at 17, right? So it's a plain mechanism setting like is how it communicates to its voice, but it does it through arbitrary location of zeros and ones. The 0, 1 is the beginning. It's the process of the grounds. Now you understand the compute line screen interference. Then you understand how to use your computer adaptation lines at high interference. Now it's back at 18.5. You understand it goes this way, 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 up, this way, down, this way, across, this way, over, line rotations, positional location calculation. Energetic ground screens calculation of its modification screen. Direct modification line interference, high position location program. How high line of rotations and a position track calculations. Put a position line high interference and position location setting, right? So it's how you communicate to your system through your computer, which is all allocated position of space and time and provisions to existence in all settings to all calculation modifications and timeline connection. All right, that's it. We're done. Taking track lines out of particle accelerator. You guys are out through equation, back contraction. Obviously, you guys have a lot of questions, but I'm just showing you how powerful it is to really recognize how a computer talks to its own system. Done by equation. See you in 5. Adios.